In this video, we will talk about Filipino mental health, why it's important, some of the stigmas, and how to maintain your Filipino mental wellness. Magandang umaga, hapon, or gabi po sa inyong lahat. This is the Brown Psych channel where we talk about Filipino mental health and anxiety so you don't have to suffer. Alam niyo naman siguro that our country has a mental health crisis. In 2018, the Mental Health Act of the Philippines was passed. So the National Center for Mental Health reported na noong 2020, most likely after the pandemic hit, there was about 149% increase in monthly calls for urgent help. So even though the country recently passed its new Mental Health Act and the Universal Healthcare Law, only about 5% of the healthcare expenditure are directed sa mental health. So there are only 7.76 hospital beds per capita, and guess how many psychiatrists per 100,000 people? 0.41 for every 100,000 people in the past year. So the lack of beds and then, the lack of trained mental health professional means that you will be waiting for a long time for care. If you're not convinced yet, here are some more statistics. According to the World Health Organization, the Philippine government does not even provide economic support to organizations involved in formulating and implementing mental health policies and legislation. So ang naging resulta, mental illness became the third most prevalent disability sa Pilipinas, with about 6 million Pinoys living with depression and anxiety. This brings the country's rate of mental disorders to the third most highest among all Western Pacific regions. The Philippine World Health Organization conducted a study in 2020 and found that about 3.6 million Filipinos suffer from at least one mental, behavioral, neurological, and substance use disorder. And according to reports, the suicide rate is about 3.2 per 100,000 Pinoys and is higher among males than females. However, these numbers, I really wonder if they're underreported because we're a predominantly Catholic country and reporting suicide is a big taboo, and as well as suicide deaths are sometimes misclassified as undetermined deaths. According to the World Health Organization, about 154 million Filipinos are suffering from depression, 1 million from schizophrenia, and about 15.3 million from substance use disorders. These issues often lead to suicide, resulting in about 877 deaths annually. That's according to the Department of Health. And mental illness can significantly, obviously, affect your employment, as you can only imagine, and also your education, especially for those around 25 to 52 years old. In another study by Hakulinan and others, that patients with mental disorders had notably lower levels of employment before and more especially after their diagnosis. And so after the diagnosis of a mental disorder, more than 50% also had no employment earnings. Filipinos are generally unhappy not only because of the poor economic conditions, but also due to the pressure that they place on themselves due to unrealistic expectations, from family, from society, and in turn, this leads them to become increasingly unhappy. Teka, ano ba ang mental health and why is it important? Well, mental health can be defined as, an emotional, psychological, social well-being. It includes our ability to cope with daily life, stresses, relationships, our work environment, and other factors. So the World Health Organization has found that depression alone cost the world about $1 trillion per year in lost productivity and medical costs. So if it's so pervasive and affects every aspect of our lives, if someone is suffering from a mental health issue, you can only imagine that person cannot fully enjoy their life, their family, their friends, and this will affect their relationships significantly and will have difficulty contributing to society or perhaps not at all. So Dr. Net, ano nga ba ang mga stigmas ng mental health and why is it taboo to talk about mental illness in the Philippines? You mean aside from being labeled as crazy or loko-loko or loka-loka by your tita and tita? And when you're feeling anxious or maybe, feeling medyo depressed ka, being labeled as nag-iinarte o maarte. Let's also take a brief look at the background of our homeland, right? So the Philippines is a country consisting of more than 7,000 islands and with over 120 languages and numerous religions. Yung country natin has had to endure many occupations and colonizations since 1545, and then we only gained independence in 1946? Our country has a unique culture that stems from historic colonial influences. Iba-iba tayo ng paniniwala. We have different cultural beliefs because we are a product of colonial history. And the Philippines is also one of the most unique in Asia. Yet, our country remains poorly understood due to its late independence and being only one of two countries in Far East that are predominantly Catholic or Christian. Some of the stigma surrounding mental illnesses such as depression and anxiety comes from the belief that it does not exist, and mental illnesses are to be ashamed of. So, there's a study, my study si Tanaka and others, in 2018, and then they found out that the following stigmas around mental health of those Filipinos who live in the Philippines, and I'm going to break it down for you, and these are the following. So the first one of these is familial problems. One of the first problems that a person with mental illness in the Philippines faces is this thing called family rejection, or being disowned. As many people believe in our country that mental disorders are a family problem, or this thing called bad blood, and can be passed down within the family. And there is actually some truth to that, which I will later talk about, like genetics and the different mental disorders in the upcoming videos. So they interviewed this female Filipino nurse, and this is what she had to say in this study. She said that his family could not accept the idea that one of their relatives is actually depressed. It's because in our culture, when it comes to mental illness, it tends to be a family affair. People think if one of you has a history of mental illnesses, that there's a chance that you already have that as well. We care about how others think about our family more than anything else. And other people feel that it's not their place to intervene in some family matters. This is according to a 48-year-old Filipina nurse that they interviewed. So the second one is unrealistic pessimism and optimism about the severity. So the second issue, when we're facing with emotional and psychological problems, one might either believe that they cannot overcome the mental illness because it's a severe functional impairment, or they are able to overcome any psychological issue by themselves, that it will not result in any serious problems. Typically, those who are suffering from mental health issues were doubted, and hindi sila binibigyan ng empathy or ng awa, I guess, in times of stress, because in our culture, we emphasize on this thing called resilience. That dapat kailangang harapin mo ng matatag ka, right? Even in the most difficult situation. So for instance, another example in the study that they did was with a 71-year-old female, and this is what she said. Filipinos are proud of being resilient. We find something funny in any difficult situation. But when you have this illness, the kind of thinking gives you a huge pressure. One day, I opened up about my mental illness to my friends, but they all had the same reaction. They laughed at me, and they didn't take it seriously. So the third one is oversimplified chronic course. This is where people without mental illnesses apply an acute illness model to those who are ill. So ibig sabihin, yung mga walang mental illnesses, they're thinking that, the illness is just acute, maiksi lang, there's no repetitive relapse or remission that can happen, and they expect a full recovery in the short term. Unfortunately, mental illnesses don't work like that. And then some of the Pinoys also say that, if symptoms are prolonged, they actually mistrust the person. So again, in this study, they interviewed like a 30-year-old male, and this is exactly what he said. After 1 month of no work, I was able to work and sleep. But in February, it came back. I couldn't sleep for several days. My supervisors were thinking that I should be working a night shift duty, but I told them that I would have to take a sick leave. But because it was the same reason from my previous absence, they're already thinking that I'm making up the story. Now that we know that mental health is a crucial part of one's well-being and should be given more attention, in this section, we will explore mental health, why it's important, and how to maintain it. So if you were to ask me if there's only one thing that is sure to improve your mental wellness, my answer will be, and always will be, physical activity and exercise. It's particularly important for me. It's so important for our physical health, not just important for our mental health. It keeps our brain really healthy, produces neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, endorphins, and make us feel so much better. It releases endorphins, which can help with anxiety, depression, and help us sleep better, as well as help in pain. It's funny because when I tell my clients about exercise, I kind of tell them that it's like you go to the gym or you go to exercise and then you receive this happy pill because it really makes you feel so good. It just like really boosts your mood. For me in particular, like that's one of the first things that I do to begin my day. You know, I sign up for classes like Pilates, or I do yoga. I do like some sort of like a physical exercise as early as either 6 o'clock or 7 in the morning before I see my clients during the day. And then the second one is eating good whole foods. Eating healthy food can help you maintain a healthy mind. It's about looking good and fitting into our latest fashion trends. It's also about maintaining like a really healthy brain. So in a study that they did with the University of Pittsburgh, they found that people who ate more fruits and vegetables had lower rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental illnesses. Healthy eating has been shown to have a positive effect on our mood, concentration, and general sense of well-being. Have you ever tried just eating candy or donuts the whole day? Probably relate to this like mind or like the gut and like the mental health connection, which we will do like another video that is more in-depth on that. So when you eat well, it can help your brain function better. In turn, it can make you feel better too. So the gut influence and brain, like there's so many, you know, like reasons on why there's a big connection, but like mainly because of the chemicals that regulate the mood. The bacteria that live in our gut produce a variety of neurotransmitters, including serotonin and dopamine, which are involved in feelings of happiness and well-being. This third one is probably also one of my favorites, and it's meditation. It has been really shown to have a powerful way to maintain our mental wellness and reduce anxiety. For sure. I used to work for a behavioral health company, and I was a consultant for some of the retirement homes here in Florida, where I live. And, you know, most of the older generation, fortunately, they don't really either know about meditation, or maybe they've heard of it, but they're confused about it. Sometimes they confuse it with like religion. But when I show them the before and after of this picture of the brain, and this is the picture of before and after we meditate, they're just like blown away and couldn't resist it anymore. And they'll say, you know, fine, I'll do it. I'll take a look at it and actually like do it. I can see on how, the difference. Just like the visual image of like the brain before and after we meditate is just like really powerful when I show this to people. So the brain where it looks like very colorful is the brain before we meditate. Like we have a lot of anxiety, stress, maybe we're ruminating, thinking a lot about different things that's making us like anxious. And the other side of that is like the bluish kind of colored brain, where it means that when we're more at peace and when we're able to kind of just like really stay in the now. So, the cool thing when we meditate is like our brain releases these neurotransmitters to called like endorphins and dopamine, and it also stabilizes, like I said earlier, our mood and really reduces anxiety. So for many people, meditation is also a form of exercise for the mind, and meditation is a great way to reduce all sorts of like rumination as well. It does this by training the mind to focus on the present, which is the now. That's why meditation is probably one of the best examples of a mindfulness activity, right? Bringing your thought to the here and now without any judgment or without any criticism. And if your mind kind of starts to wander, that is so normal when it comes to meditation. And again, I'll put like another video later on about like the proper way of meditation. And it's really a skill, and not a lot of people will be good at a skill that you're just beginning to do. And so, be gentle on yourselves when you're kind of saying that I cannot do this, because like I often hear my clients talk about that. Meditation also actually helps you to sleep better, lower your blood pressure, and then it's also a natural painkiller, causing the body to release melatonin, which will also help you fall asleep. So you may notice that as you practice meditation, you get a more restful sleep and wake up feeling, restored and refreshed. And then the number 4 is like taking a walk. Walking is an easy form of exercise that can be done anywhere and anytime. It typically also releases the same chemicals as running does, but it's less intense in the body, so it can be a great option for someone, especially those of you who are recovering from an injury. Number 6 is taking a yoga class. Oh, I love doing yoga. It not only releases chemicals that are similar to running and walking, but it also benefits our mind by increasing our focus, really just concentrating on the now and the present moment, and also increases our attention span. And I love yoga because it has not just like the physical component, but it also has the psychological physiological component, like for your mental wellness, and also, you know, the spiritual component of yoga is also is something that I always like look forward to whenever I do it. And I do it on a regular basis, thank goodness. I used to not, but it has been repeatedly recommended to me, especially for someone like me who have like chronic low back pain. It's so, I can't even, you know, like begin to tell you how amazing it has been for like my recovery for my chronic low back. And then number 7 is spending time with those that we love and support us. So I really wanted to make a distinction when I say spending time with those that we love and those that support us. But I also wanted to add spending time with people that we love, respect, and support us. Because we do have relatives, unfortunately, in the Filipino culture. Some of them can be really toxic. And you know, some of our titas and titos can unfortunately be like this, right? So I really want you to make a distinction between being intentional when it comes to spending a lot of time with people. We need to spend time, but we also have to cut that time so it's not as toxic in our well-being. This is the reason why the pandemic was so difficult for us, right? Because as humans, we are social creatures and we need to spend time with other humans to survive. It's so easy to feel lonely, isolated, and depressed when you're not spending any time with anyone else. And the benefits of socializing is kind of like similar to some of the things that I mentioned, because it releases also the endorphins and serotonin, which makes us feel happier, makes us feel that we're not alone in the world. And so like when problems come, when some of the stressors of life comes, we know that we have other people to support us. Number 7 is consulting a therapist to maintain your mental wellness so you don't go on automatic pilot. So before I talk about like the automatic pilot thing, and like I said, you know, each and every step of this will dig a little deeper in upcoming videos. But let me talk to you first real quick about maintaining your mental wellness by seeing a therapist. Because I know that in the Filipino culture, we always think that when you're seeing a therapist, and even up to this day, apparently I still hear that some of my Filipino clients would tell me that it's only for the quote-unquote crazy, right? Like that's what their relatives would tell them, that why are you seeing a therapist? That's just like for crazy. I'm not crazy. Or why do I need to see a therapist? I'm not crazy. But I really wanted to make sure that you understand that that's a myth, because like you can also see a mental therapist, not just for your mental wellness, you know, to kind of like constantly create just like a good, healthy balance in your life, but you can also see a therapist for coaching if you have goals, maybe in your business or in your career. And then for me, I just sometimes really need a sounding board. Initially, you know, because I needed to heal in some of the things that I've went through before, I used to see a therapist like on a weekly basis. But now, because I wanted to just maintain my mental wellness and I don't really have like a lot of current issues, thank goodness, I only see my therapist every other week because I don't want to go on automatic pilot. And when I say automatic pilot, it just means that we're so used to just, you know, when we're, for instance, like feeling anxious, these are some of the things that I do. But when I see my therapist and I kind of talk about like my thoughts and my behaviors and my emotions, I am so aware. I am so aware of what I'm doing. And so I'm more productive because I don't go on my automatic pilot. So having said that, like I kind of said already earlier, we need to create boundaries. And this is number 8. So this step is all about creating healthy boundaries with yourself, your partner, your family, so that when things get difficult or stressful, it's not as overwhelming. Setting boundaries for yourself, like saying no to something, you know, like not drinking, not spending a lot of money, not that you don't have, not overcommitting, you know, setting your boundaries, including to the people, like including your partners, to avoid emotional manipulation, and like family members, because I know that in the Filipino culture, it's so hard to say no, right? Because like saying yes is kind of like equivalent to like a respect or something, especially with the higher authorities. So we always have to be like very cognizant on where we're saying yes and how we're also creating boundaries so we can have like a better mental wellness. Again, this is Dr. Net. I hope that you learned many things about what we talked about today, but we are signing off. And I just wanted to remind you again to be gentle with yourself because you're all a work in progress. Maraming salamat. So if you have learned anything about mental wellness in this video, and if you think this video will be helpful for other people who are also going through a lot of things, or maybe they just want to maintain their mental wellness, please like and share or send this video to them so that hopefully they can also learn from what we talked about today. Maraming salamat po.